Did you know that despite making up 50% of sellers, women hold just 30% of the sales leadership roles? It's not a pipeline problem. That's a promotion problem. Welcome to the Women in Sales Leadership podcast, where we make the new rules of success for high-performing women in sales. And I'm your host, Amy Evans, sales leader turned executive coach. After 25 years in the trenches at Salesforce, EDP, and startups, I now help ambitious sales managers step into second-line leadership roles. If you are ready to lead with authority, earn what you're worth, and make a bigger impact, you are in the right place. Click follow so the next episode will be waiting for you. Welcome to the Women in Sales Leadership podcast. We are tackling a topic today that I don't know a single person that doesn't deal with this. And that is the truth of how it takes so much courage to acknowledge when it's time to change and start over again. And there's this innate resistance that we have to change sometimes, right? Like our bodies, the neuroscience of our brain is to like always be looking for safety and security. And often that mechanism that's meant to protect us can actually get in the way of us making progress. And so when I think about the courage to start over again, oh my gosh, this topic is applicable in so many ways. In my career, in my personal life, it's like that's the theme. And I think what maybe we don't always acknowledge is that that's always the theme. We're always starting over again. And every day presents a new chance. So let me take this down into some actual stories that happened along the way in my life and in my career. And so when I think about the courage to start over again, every single time I made a job change or I got promoted, those were do-overs. Those were start-overs. And what I recognize is when I was earlier in my career, the fearlessness to do that was just there for me, right? I had so little to lose, right? What did I have? I had myself, I had a boatload of student loan debt and, rent to pay. And, I think I had a car payment too. Anyway, but like the stakes were lower. And so I was able to absorb these changes of starting over. And those do-overs, those starting overs look like every time I had to change roles, right? All that learning that occurred along the way. And as an individual contributor, that ability to learn and that speed of learning gets quicker and quicker once you start to really gain those core skills about selling and relationships and cold calling and deal management, all the things that it takes to be an effective individual contributor in sales. So, I moved just like a lot of people do, just like many of you have done, where I started at the bottom in lead generation. And then I raised my hand and was able to secure an inside sales role, which, is what they were called back then when you sold to really small accounts and it was just over the phone. You were not going out into the field, like out in person to go visit accounts, which was the style of selling. And so I kept progressing up and I decided to go get my MBA because I had gotten an undergraduate degree in science, in biology, thinking that I was going to be a doctor. And, middle of my junior year, I realized I had zero interest in being a doctor. And the only thing that I was interested in and that fired me up was business. And I knew I wanted to somehow be, in business, working with businesses. And I didn't know what the heck that meant. And so I went and got an MBA in management at night while working full time. And when I got done with that study, the whole goal of it, which is so comical, was that I wanted to earn the right to be an outside sales rep. Like I went and got an MBA to be able to justify a promotion to outside sales rep. And I got the promotion, right? And I remember my boss telling me at the time, it was a mid-sized startup with not a lot of infrastructure, like a lot of mid-sized startups don't have a lot of infrastructure for training. And, the president of the company who was running sales, he said, Aim, I can't train you. I won't be able to support you. And I said, don't worry about it. I've figured it out. I figured it out every time. And I'm going to find a mentor. And I found this one single female who was the only salesperson in the company that was a woman. And she became my mentor and helped me a lot. In fact, like the things she taught me when I was in that early stage were things that carried me through years later when I was selling, multi-million dollar deals at a level that I just would have never dreamed that I was going to sell at. And couldn't even conceive of at that time. But those little changes took bits of courage and bits of courage. And I got to a place where I'd been in ADP, which is the payroll company, big, old, stodgy ADP. And the only way I got there was that they bought the startup that I had been working at. And so I got a chance to see what a Fortune 500 company looked like and felt like. And, there were a lot of things that were crazy that they did, but there were a lot of things that were amazing that they did. And it was more amazing than crazy, which is, I think, the metric that you got to evaluate any company by. Like, there's always going to be some amount of insanity. It's just, does the good stuff outweigh? And when I was at ADP, I began to start to feel, a lot of the people that stayed there, that worked there, stayed there forever. And this was in the 2000s when people didn't stay at companies that long anymore. But these folks were there for like 15, 20 years. And I also thought, well, maybe this is a home for me. Maybe I stay in this place. And then I got a phone call, and there was this opportunity that came my way to go work for a mid-stage startup where I would be like one of their first hires on a new sales team they were building. And the new sales team, the whole objective of the team was to completely transform the revenue stream for that business, to take the company. And had I really understood the gravity of what we were being asked to do at the time, I might not have done the job. But now in retrospect, I understand how huge the task was that we were being asked to do. But what I actually saw in that opportunity was a shot at leadership. I was going to come in as an individual contributor, but I had a path to get to a leader right away. And I told them that in the interview process. I said, I want to be a leader. And I remember the co-founder of the company saying, Amy, well, what's going to happen if, in 6 months or a year from now, you're not in leadership? And I said, well, then we're going to have a conversation about that. That was my attitude. And thankfully I got the job, and it turned out to be an amazing opportunity. But when the opportunity was offered to me, I went and interviewed. I liked what I saw. I liked the energy. I liked the leader that was recruiting me. The solution in the market was a great product market fit. They'd proven that. So there were lots of check boxes, and I didn't even know what those things were at this time. But I flew out for the final interview, and they offered me the job on the spot. And I think I shocked the hell out of them when I looked at them and said, I'm going to have to thank you. I'm excited about this. I'm going to have to think about this. Like, you need to give me some time. And I took a week. Which I don't know if you can do that in today's market, but you might be able to. I took a week. For the right company and the right role, they'll wait a week for you. So I took a week, and what I was really contemplating was, can I really do this job? And I knew it would mean for me to take this job. Suddenly I'd go from, commuting to an office that was, 30 minutes away by car to, traveling and having a region like a sales territory where I could drive within a couple hours, small territory, to now running like almost a half of the country. And all the travel that went along with that. And my kids at the time were like toddlers, like maybe 2 and 3 years old. And I thought, I really want this job. I see this potential. I'm excited. I'm energized by it. It's going to be exciting. And I can get away from this confining structure that the Fortune 500 ADP sales machine was, where I was just a number there. And I wanted to have a crack at like being inside of a startup again, because I loved that energy of mid-stage of a startup. And a mid-stage startup has like this amazing energy, intensity, and they have a little bit of money. They have some resources to do things with, which is really helpful when you're trying to sell. But I almost didn't take this job. I almost didn't take it. And the things that held me back was worrying about the travel. And that's what I said out loud, was that I was worried about the travel, and I was worried about, being away from my kids. And those were legit concerns. But the thing that I wouldn't talk about was how scared I was about if I could really do the job and if I was really going to be successful. Hey, quick break for a second. If you are a sales leader who is ready for your next step up, and I'm talking about leading other sales leaders, becoming a director, a VP, even a CRO, then this is for you. I'm hosting a free workshop. You can grab your spot at amyevanscoaching.com. This is for sales leaders who are in tech and are wanting to land jobs where you can earn anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million a year. And again, you can grab your spot at amyevanscoaching.com. Okay, back to the show. And there was this moment where, like, it was closing in on the week since they gave me the offer, and I really had to give an answer, right? And there was this moment where I was talking with my mother-in-law, and I was sharing with her, what my concerns were. And I have to hand her so much credit. She's such a graceful and, encouraging person. Has always been a big encourager of me, which I'm so grateful for. Even now, she's just positive. And she said to me, Amy, do you want this job? And I said, yes, I really want this job. And she said, well, we'll find a way to make things work to help you and my husband at the time, and, with these kids, my little kids. And I took that as, that was like, I needed permission from her to let go of the other fear of the child excuse. And then I just went for it. And I said yes. And it turned out to be a huge, pivotal moment in my career, where I went from being an individual contributor to, and I still was an individual contributor for a few months at the startup that I went to. And I came in and I sold some of their first enterprise deals. Like before I showed up, and another, colleague of mine at the time who was hired showed up, they'd only ever been selling like small business deals and maybe mid-market deals. And I came in and sold multi-million-dollar deals, huge deals, and grew. And then I just grew And it was like my whole career took off from this one scary move that I made that really wasn't that scary. And the thing that I had to overcome was this worry of like, who did I have to become? And did I have it in me to step up and rise up, to execute at that level, to lead at that level? And I did. I had it in me all along. And I think that's something that's so real that happens when we're faced with those big choices, those big opportunities to either, step up inside the company or consider, other opportunities outside the company. That fear of, will I be successful? And I will have to give up a little bit of comfort of, and it's funny because we call it like comfort and safety. And then the reality is like, we're not actually safe. The facts are we're not safe anywhere. Because nobody's immune. Nobody's immune to performance. Nobody's immune to having a bad quarter or a bad year. Nobody's immune to businesses that just randomly decide to lay off workers in spite of performance, which happens. There are high performers all the time that get laid off. It's not just they're getting rid of people who they can't otherwise fire because, it would take too long to go through performance process. So that fear is real. And I think, what had been holding me back was like this safety. Like I felt safe doing what I was doing. I knew the people, I knew the process, I knew stuff. I was respected. I had a brand. And to be willing to let go of some of that safety and comfort in order to rise up and stretch myself and become uncomfortable, right? This growth component that requires discomfort. And I won't lie, like it was so uncomfortable. It was, but it was also thrilling. It was so thrilling to take that job. And it was like, I went from feeling like I was just like making the donuts every day, same shit, different day, to I was learning something new every day and figuring stuff out. And I had a lot of license and freedom to go make things happen and figure things out. And suddenly my ability to be creative and take license with what my instincts and what felt right. Like I had permission to do that. Whereas in the environment that I was in before, I was constrained, right? It was corporate. There were all these freaking rules. I remember I had to fight so hard to get a freaking, sale, like a field marketing event, a breakfast, like a luncheon where I had a guest speaker who was going to come in and speak on a very relevant topic at the time. And I had this great idea and I was going to go do all this. And I went and told field marketing about it. I wanted their support and they were going to help me coordinate this event. And they looked at me and I got this like, no way, little girl, we're not going to do this event. People don't show up for stuff like that. That's a terrible idea. If you want to do that, good luck. And I went and did that event on my own in corporate. But when I was outside of that corporate space and I was in that smaller, more nimble environment, I had permission. As long as I could create a business case for making the investment to spend dollars to sponsor this or whatever crazy idea I had at the time, I got yeses 100% of the time. And the reason I got those yeses was because I delivered the results. And I was showing pipeline build and I was showing deal execution and we were growing our team and we were blowing out the numbers, right? And it took a lot for me to do that job. Like I had to fully give 100% of my like work energy into that job. And it was energizing. And it really lit me up. And you can tell, you can hear it. Like I have such fond memories. And we built a business that I was proud of. I looked people in the eye. I looked my customers in the eye and said, trust us. We are going to deliver for you. And we delivered. And we delivered. So there will be times, and you might be in one of those times, where you recognize that you're bumping up against this realization that it's not working for you, or it's not inspiring for you, or it's not energizing for you. And there's a couple things to do when you're faced with that. First off, acknowledging it is step number one, to say, you know what, I'm not happy with this. And then you get to go on a journey of asking yourself questions. And the questions that I would recommend asking are, what do you want to do about it? And what are the options that you have? Because there's always more options than you think. There's always more options than you think. So acknowledging that you're going to take action, and then weighing what are the options. And then the last one that I'm going to give you here is this: don't talk yourself out of an opportunity before you fully have explored it. Don't talk yourself out of an opportunity before you fully explored it. Don't go read that job description that has 45 freaking bullets that no single human being has all of those qualifications, and believe that because you might not have some of them, that you couldn't get that role. And the only time that you have a decision to make is when you have an offer in hand. Up until that point, everything is just a conversation. You're not cheating on your current company. You're not cheating on your current boss. You're not being disloyal. The only loyalty that you need to have is to yourself, to your family, to the people you love. There's nothing wrong with being loyal to your company. But ultimately, the most important alignment that you've got to have is with your own values and what you know is important to you. And a big part of living a life that you love is loving your work and being energized with it. High achievers, oh my goodness, this is the one thing that when I work with high achievers all day long, high achieving sales leaders, and this is the one thing they all want. They want growth. They want to learn. They want to get better. They want new challenges, not to be stuck on the same old treadmill of hit the number every month, every quarter, every year, right? And it's when you're giving yourself permission to have courage, to embrace the possibility of a change, and that you might be ready for a change, that you could create opportunities for yourself that could blow your mind. And when I did this big jump to this startup, what's crazy is that I more than doubled my income, which was really meaningful for me. You know, I had 2 babies in childcare. I had loans, student loans I was paying off, right? I know we had credit card debt at the time. For me to double my income, I think I went from making like 100, 200, I think it was about 200 grand a year to over 400 grand a year in that one jump. Now, money alone isn't worth chasing something, but it's no secret that staying where you are, and if that's right for you, that's right for you. And I'm not going to try to tell you that it's wrong. But staying where you are could be a good path for you. And it can absolutely give you lifts up, but you generally won't see big jumps like that in earnings. where you won't see like a double of earnings. You won't see 100K plus increases in earnings. And for me, that impact was huge. It changed my life. It set me on the path of being a second line sales leader. It set me on a path of being an executive, where I was then a part of the executive leadership team, and I got to set strategy. And when I moved up to other places in my career along the way, eventually getting me to a place where I was making 7 figures as a sales leader. I would have never believed I could have done that. Just a girl from Wyoming with a degree in biology who loved business, right? So if you're at this point, and this time of year is such a great time for reflection, I would encourage you to give yourself permission to reflect a little bit about this year and what's happened, what's not happened. Forgive yourself for maybe the things that haven't happened that you've wanted to have happen, and recognize that you can start over whenever you decide to. And the starting over can begin today. You don't have to wait for January 1 or a new quarter or a new year. That chance and that courage to begin again and to begin anew is right there in you. And if you're worried about what happens if it doesn't work out, that's so normal and natural. You wouldn't be a human if you weren't wondering that. The question I would invite you to give yourself permission to answer is, what if it does work out? What if it does work out? And then if you really want to give yourself something to think about, a question you can ask yourself is, when was the last time I truly failed? When was the last time I truly failed? I don't think you probably have failed. And believe me, having founded a business and taken big, huge jumps in my career, I was scared out of my mind most of the time when I was making those choices. But the way that I made those choices was, I looked at the information, I looked at the people, and if it was a good opportunity and I felt in my heart that it was going to be a good thing for me, I did it. And even the things that I write about, that I talk about, if you have heard this story from me before, where I went and I became a leader, a national sales leader of a business that was, of a sales team that was just like completely dismally failing, and turned it around. And I talk about, what crummy leadership I had at the top and how I ultimately ended up leaving. It wasn't a great culture, but you know what? Even in that opportunity, I learned who I was. I learned how to turn around an organization. I learned how to take a sales team that was like 1 foot out the door and get them re-engaged in the business. I learned how to partner with the product team and the development team so we could start filling out the gaps in the product that were causing us to lose competitive deals. I learned how to make a business case in front of the CEO to completely change the quotas for the rest of the year and completely reinvent a comp plan that would get the team rallied around hitting a number that we could actually achieve and would get the business back on track. I learned from all of that. It was some of my proudest work, and it was one of the toughest experiences that I had. It wasn't a failure. And these are the things that you have an opportunity to do, because, when it's all said and done, it'll be the tough choices. It'll be the hard challenges that you chose to take on. It'll be the things that you thought you were failing at that actually end up teaching you the most and that form you as a leader and strengthen you as a human being. So I would just invite you to give yourself permission to have some courage if you are getting ready to start over or you're in that moment of starting over. I think that's where we'll end it. See you next week.
Hey there. Thank you so much for joining today. I know you're a super generous person, and a gift that you could give to someone you know, a friend, a colleague that you think would enjoy today's episode would be to send them a text, share a link to this episode with them. I do produce this show myself, and every time you share it, it helps the podcast grow and it supports the work that I do here. Also, if you happen to be a sales leader who is ready to take your next step up into a leader of leaders role, whether it's via promotion or you're ready to go and get that new job at a new company, I'm talking about director roles, VP roles, even CRO roles in B2B tech, where you can earn $500,000 to $1 million or more. The workshop I'm giving is an hour-long workshop. It's totally free. You'll learn the process that I teach my clients on how to effectively position themselves, effectively network, and own their executive presence so they can land the job and get hired and promoted into these big sales leadership roles in B2B tech. If this sounds like you, come grab your spot. It's waiting for you at my website, amyevanscoaching.com, where you can unlock what's next for you.